Welcome to Let's Talk Space Medicine. I'm Kyle Anderson, your medical student slash space nerd host. For your listening entertainment, I gather my other medically inclined space nerd friends to talk all things space medicine. With our powers combined, we hope to explore and entertain the medical questions that stand between us and the stars. Here we are in Orbit 3, Astronaut Selection, making space for everyone. As a brief disclaimer, anything discussed on Let's Talk Space Medicine should not be considered medical advice, and is therefore not a substitute for seeking medical help from a doctor. We are simply interested in entertaining topics within the field of space medicine. So today, Orbit 3. Here we are, done 3 of them now, and our topic today is astronaut selection, making space for everyone. And today I'm joined by our good space nerd friend Ryan from the College of Human Medicine at Michigan State University, a medical student who's interested in nutrition, botany, riding a cool blue bicycle, and other great things. And
too many interests to list, really.
and I'm your host Kyle, and I am your medical student space nerd host. And today's topic I thought was really interesting to kind of discuss. It was actually Ryan's idea, so thank you for bringing it up. And
I got you.
it's about how astronauts are selected, and kind of how is the landscape shifting, like kind of like rapidly. It seems like under the feet of the current state of things, where the way things are viewed often about astronaut selection is that it's a very rigorous process. It's something that only the most highly trained athletes can really even consider, like even daydream about. You have to be this like marathon runner. You have to have also, be this expert scuba diver and all these physical requirements. But what is changing currently, and how can we make space this place for kind of everyone to be there? Space is, if it's going to be this inclusive thing and we're going to go for all of humanity, like how are we going to get everyone there, and what are some of the limitations with that? So I thought this was a really cool topic that you brought up, Ryan, and excited to talk about it today. But before that, just wanted to check in with you. How are you doing, my friend? And I hope everything's going well with your research and just hanging out. So how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, man. It's the weather is kind of on the upswing here in Michigan. Finally getting some sunshine, which is a nice change of pace. The research end of things is kind of just a slow process in general, and I think anyone who does research kind of knows that's how it is. Um, but yeah, just excited to like get outside more. I have not yet been vaccinated, so that's something that I'm trying to figure out. And Michigan actually just announced that April 5th, I think, is when they open the floodgates to people in my position who are younger and not necessarily like on the front lines. So that might be my ticket in. I might try to do something to get vaccinated a little sooner. Not for the purpose to get vaccinated necessarily, but just to try to jump back into like the medical world a bit before I have to go back to med school and start my 3rd year. So yeah, a couple things going on. This is still probably the most exciting thing I got happening though, doing this podcast with you for sure. How about
Yeah.
you, man? What's been going on with you?
So my research is in like bone implant biology, and it started out with like this, NASA project, and but there's not enough like work usually to do a whole PhD on space something. It just the amount of projects and the amount of information coming out of the space sector is just really limited. So kind of in
For sure.
my is able to work. I've been able to work on a lot of different bone projects, and one of them found an interesting kind of finding with diabetic, the response of a diabetic rodent to an implant. So, like,
Nice.
diabetes is like characterized by this inflammatory kind of generalized inflammation, also insulin insensitivity, and also there are changes in bone remodeling. So bone remodeling is kind of the constant turnover of you kind of think of it as like a road. Your road needs to be paved, and then it needs to be cured. The asphalt needs to be cured, or whatever, and then it needs to be then it's structurally sound. But then when you get potholes, you need to like remodel it and then remake it. So
Sure.
that whole
Kyle, you are cutting out just a little bit, in and out, just a tiny bit. I don't
Oh,
know if you
okay.
need to be closer to your mic or what. Just a
Oh, my
heads
in
up.
terms of my audio.
Yeah, that
Okay,
sounds good though.
I'll just move it closer. I think I just had a lag spike, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. Never mind.
I'll
All
move it
good.
closer anyway. But yeah, pretty much this bone remodeling process is slowed in diabetics, and so not really sure why that's happening. I think it's a glucose related process,
Yes.
but
Unknowns.
yeah. So pretty much like discovering some of the risk factors that might be going into
Mm-hmm.
why diabetics may see changes in their integration. The ability for them to ingrow bone into cementless implants is kind of
Cool.
my thing. And so we're
Well, it's
designing this
exciting to like.
experiment, and yeah.
It's exciting to have like a positive finding of any kind, you know. So that's cool that you've got like this thing happening. You're like, oh, wait a minute, we need to like figure out what's going on here. That's sweet. I
Yeah,
like that.
it came down to like, one like there was like 1 hour where I was like like all my work for this project that had used diabetic animals compared to an OVX, an overrectomized animal, and then a control animal. I had run the stats a couple different ways, and I was like, "There's like this happened, like there's something here," and it literally like pops up, and you're like, "Oh, like of these like 5 factors that are related to implant fixation, there's this one that is like out like is something that we didn't expect," and so like then it just kind of blossomed from there. But
Cool.
it's been hard to like coordinate implant surgeries and getting people to work together and all the stuff related to COVID. So it's been good, hard. I also have a manuscript under review that I sent in on Christmas Eve, and it hasn't been. It's usually about a 2 week turnaround,
Oh no.
and it's still like in the backlog of things. So it's like, what is going on? I don't know. So we're a little frustrated by that, and it's actually hard to know like what levers to push. Because other people have
Sure.
in our institution have like gone through the review process and like are getting close to done by the time that we haven't even
Hmm.
gotten reviews back. So it's like something is going wrong, and I think this is luckily, the bright side of it is, I think this is not just, this isn't more of a systemic issue. Like a lot of the journals right now are kind of overrun with articles being, you know, submitted. So I don't think it's a journal specific thing. Just kind of interesting.
Hmm. Sweet. Well, to kind of guide us back in on the topic, Kyle, I liked your intro. I think that the way that I kind of see all this, it shouldn't be really all that surprising to anyone that the European Space Agency was kind of spearheading this effort to find ways to be more inclusive in terms of the astronauts we send up. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that that's happening right now, because it's kind of just the state of things, at least in the United States and probably most of the Western world, where there are inclusivity movements left and right, trying to get rights for people who are trans. And this is also something that happens a lot in the medical world in and of itself. Like speaking as a medical student, right? I'm sure you had this experience where you have like a lot of lectures and just discussions based around providing care to people who are LGBTQ plus, and kind of figuring out what their unique problems are. And I think the space sector is also, at least on the government side of it, maybe not less so like the commercial side of it, but they're also trying to find ways to they're always trying to look for ways to be relevant and interesting to society, because the taxpayers, the ones funding them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just it's really unsurprising, and but also really really cool, because unlike a lot of things where you and I, we can learn about this in medicine, and it's awesome that we can provide the right care to people who need it, especially if they're trans or gay or something, and they have special risk factors, or just different way of being treated historically by the health system. Like that's awesome that we're approaching that problem. But where space comes in with this kind of thing is, it takes a problem like that, and by bringing in more people, being more inclusive, it really takes it to a whole new level, right? Because suddenly this is like international news when you're able to send someone with a unique like set of circumstances into space. And that I believe is kind of the main reason why the ESA, the European Space Agency, is going for it. Is they realize that they have like a pretty incredible platform through the space station, right? There's not a human platform higher up, so to speak. So
Yeah.
it's neat. It's cool.
Yeah, so I'm gonna cut over to what you're talking about. So here we have an article that was posted. Let's see if they have a date. They don't have a date. I hate when they don't have like a date right around the. Anyway, it's a very recent article. We're recording this in March of 2021. And it's titled Para-Astronaut Feasibility Project. And it's really this push, as Ryan was saying, for ESA, the European Space Agency, to open up, or to like essentially explore the idea of having para-astronauts, people with a physical disability, so no mental disability. I don't think that's a part of their equation, but people with physical disability, to be useful in the space environment, like not just as an it's for inclusion, but also like there's potential advantages that they could have.
Yeah, that's a fun discussion to have for sure.
So I thought this was like really interesting, and it really is coming, like it's kind of being circulated in the news, in the space news world, from multiple fronts, and I thought this was like a great time to jump into it.
Sure, and I just want to add, the reason why I suggested this to you is because I think you and I, and probably people who are actually on the front lines involved with the selection process from a health perspective, I think you and I, we have like a unique perspective on this, right? Because obviously there are advantages. There's no question that there are advantages to sending people with unique circumstances, or with unique problems, to space, to kind of demonstrate like, hey, if you have this disability, don't let it stop you. Like that message is super powerful. But you and I, we have a unique perspective on this, because it still needs to be safe. If the message doesn't work if you send someone with a disability up, and that disability ends up causing some kind of mission failure, or it poses a risk that the rest of the crew has to face now,
Mm-hmm.
So we have like a really unique perspective to look in this and say like, okay, let's take a second and step back and maybe think about, what kinds of disabilities don't really pose risk, and what kinds do. And that is a lot of what's going on in the discussion with them too, in terms of like mental health versus physical disabilities. Who can we send up, and what risks are we willing to take, if any?
Mm-hmm.
to platform this kind of messaging.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a lot to like. It's gonna be
Lots
figured
of
out.
process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna figure it's gonna get figured out. Like I'm just trying to imagine like how it's gonna get figured out. You know,
Hmm.
it gets figured out through discussions. You know, like how do people grasp with complex issues, and it's like it's usually through discussions, maybe in podcast format. I don't know, but
Maybe.
you know, like conferences, debates, and then like and just like publications, and then but sometimes it's just like people are going to end up pushing the boundary, and
Yeah.
we're going to figure out what to do afterwards almost. And so it's just kind of interesting because there was another article that came up that talked about like the new right stuff, and it kind of highlighted like what is happening in the year of 2021 about, you know, para astronauts and different things that are kind of like pushing the boundary, and like, you know, us like morally and ethically having to figure out like what to do, you know, not only about this issue but all the issues in space. It's like advancement is going to outpace our ability to kind of grapple with it from a moral standpoint. And so, what's kind of coming down the line is they're advocating for more people with disabilities to fly into orbit and beyond. And the reasons are pretty much the rise of commercial spaceflight. So, this opportunity, you know, NASA might not become the only show in town. You know, it's like you can control your treehouse, and you know, you can control who
Yeah.
comes into your treehouse, um, and you're trying to do stuff that's funded by taxpayers, and you have a certain obligation to to be, you know, to use it for the best possible thing, and for it to be the safest or whatever. But with the rise of commercial space flight, the ability for those medical requirements to be opened, or for more risks to be taken, or less traditional, you know, applicants to be accepted, or to rethink this whole environment is it seems really kind of it's happening, like it's happening. And it's like I was absolutely shocked. There's a lot of news about this commercial space flight with the SpaceX Crew Dragon going up for I think a 4-day mission, and it includes a person, I think a physician assistant from St. Jude's who
Mm.
likely had osteosarcoma, kind of a bone cancer, but it resulted in her having, you know, it often, you know, when you have a bone cancer, you often have to resect, you know, the cancerous lesion, and so she has a prosthesis, um, and like orthopedic hardware, I think, and is going to space. And like those things, like I never thought that those things would ever like interact. Like having even minor surgeries often like I think disqualify people from, you know, having, you know, being fit to go to space, or even go to like Antarctica. Like there's multiple
Sure.
like places where, you know, having you know, different surgeries, or having like you know, they have to know your like dental history, they have to know every bit about your medical history, looking for things that would cause a risk. And so for this person to go to space, you know, albeit for a not like super long time, but to have like all of this orthopedic hardware and to have like a lot done is like a really wonderful thing. And I think it's kind of interesting, like so my interest is in like orthopedics and bone and mobility, and like definitely helping people like walk again and pick up their children and like do these kind of daily life things is really powerful. And you know one of the things uh, like for someone to be able to go to space and have all this orthopedic hardware is like it's just really interesting. I never thought that would ever happen. you know
Yeah, it's cool, and I think it brings up kind of another point of like, or another argument rather, for why it might be a good idea to open the floodgates a little bit wider. I shouldn't even say floodgates, right? Because it's not a flood of people going to space. It's still a trickle. So to open the, I guess the to turn the faucet just a little bit, maybe like um, let in a more varied and wider population of people to the possibility of being allowed to go into space on a mission. There are a couple arguments you can make for it, right? We already kind of talked about how inclusivity is just awesome, and demonstrating people with problems can do things as cool even as going to space. But another thing is like it's just really kind of terrible that potentially amazing candidates who have like great research acumen, they have a lot of professional credentials, and they're extremely qualified for the position. They might get ruled out because of something they didn't have any control over, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to filter out people who have a lot to offer. So revisiting what filters we use to choose who goes up is also a good idea for that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And I like having PAs go up too. I think that like makes a lot of sense to me as well. So not really knowing a lot about their other background, I just think it's really neat that the osteosarcoma wasn't something that's going to hold her back.
Yeah, I think
But yeah.
Part of the reason that she was picked was that she works at St. Jude's Children's Hospital, or works at a hospital
cool.
that is, you know, I think she either worked on a COVID floor, or it's had something to do with kind of this thing we've been dealing with that everyone, everyone. It's been a year, so it's like there's no need to even
people in space.
Yeah. Well, even they had to quarantine. Like had to. They had to. Yeah. But it's like. But yeah,
you can't get away from it then.
Yeah, there's no escape. But yeah, so for even like I think that's part of the reason that she was picked, and I think she has a very compelling case, and it's part of it is PR at this point, and like promoting this and saying everyone can do this and being inclusive. But I think what this article also brings up next is kind of interesting too, is that some things might be easier. So it brings up common things that we all do. Even astronauts, they're real people. They use the bathroom, and so they talked about like people with an ostomy bag wouldn't need like a toilet. Like
that's such a good example.
Yeah, so it's like there are cases where a person with a given that has gone through some kind of medical intervention, whether it's surgery or like an ostomy bag or like these different things, they might actually be better equipped. It's like, so it's like it. I love when it just turns the table, and you're just like oh, like
complete 180.
like if before this, before looking into this topic, like, and I think even previously, I've thought like, oh, it's this very stringent, medical thing, and they're just going to be these hard-nosed, flight surgeons, and they're not going to want like any risk, like they're risk averse, I think. And it's like, well, here's your risk, and it's like, oh, well, it's actually better. And it's like I never expected that. And I'm just so happy because like there's multiple like social innovations that will need something like this to work, and it's like it both has to be a push for inclusivity, which is like a strong argument anyway, but also just like that they're just as capable, and it's like they might even provide benefit, is like you have to hit it from multiple fronts to kind of move this boundary. uh,
Definitely.
and kind of one other thing that this article brings up, that I wanted to talk about, was the fact that like part of the like space medicine research early on, they actually were able to use, or like were able to study persons with disability, and to help them understand spaceflight physiology better. So it's like if you're gonna, it's like if you're gonna study people with disability, and to help able-bodied people to go to space, then you have, like, you can't just, like, that'd be a bad case. You want like everyone, especially if they're used for a study subject to help you get to space, you want to enable them to go to space also. So I thought this was a, because you don't want to like be like, it's like it feels predatory almost. It's like, oh, we're just gonna
Sure. No.
study. Um,
Bringing someone up just to be a lab rat. Yeah, that is a
well,
little.
yeah, like, so what happened in this thing, is there were 11 deaf men recruited to test the feasibility of human spaceflight, at a time when nobody knew what the human body could withstand, beyond our atmosphere. And in particular, these men, they were all, I believe they were all deaf, and because they were all, yeah, they were all deaf, and because they were deaf, they were really interested in studying how they could adapt to different spaceflight conditions, understanding motion sickness and adaptation to spaceflight. So it's like, I just thought this was super interesting, from a physiology standpoint, like, to use these test subjects, and you know they were recruited for this study to help spaceflight, and by that same merit being recruited to this study, they were disqualified from spaceflight.
Oh
So
man, yeah.
it's like such a, like, it's like that equation, we're trying to flip that equation and saying, hey, like, people with, disability, they should be like, they should get a ticket for, like, first, more often, if they're a part of this study, like,
Mm-hmm.
they were able to help prolong, or help promote spaceflight. So I thought this was, it just really flips the script, and I'm just so happy about that, because it's like space for me is like a place, that it's very inspirational as an idea. It feels like it's a frontier. It's not tainted by the trappings of kind of human politics, and I mean it just, it feels like it's at least a step ahead of it, or a step away from it,
Sure.
and not like that it'll ever escape it, but it's like, hey, we really should think about like how we can make space inclusive, and to make it for everyone. Like, what a sad thing it would be if space was just for, like, but it's, if it was only for like the
The healthiest, like
yeah,
competent humans or
like,
whatever. Yeah.
let's get everyone up, let's do that, and let's make it this, we envision, we often, people in the space community, we have a vision for the future. Like, you want to see these things happen, and you have like a daydream about like what's going to happen in space, and it's like having having an open for everyone is like so much a part of it. Like for me, it's like you just it's just it's like this thing I don't want it to get politicized and people to it to be exclusionary and gatekept.
Right.
You
And
know, it's like it's just, it'd be so
historically, it's
depressing.
been historically, I think it's been all about, collaboration, right? Getting countries who aren't even on good terms with one another in some situations, like Russia and the United States historically, to get together and do something collaborative. Um, and it's all about bringing in more, you know, more countries, more people into that equation.
Yep.
Yeah, dude, I think we've done a really good job, just kind of like to sum up where we started and where we are in this conversation. I think we covered um, we covered reasons why it's a good idea to uh, broaden our scopes here and let more people go up. Um, Inclusivity is good. Removing barriers to qualified astronauts is good. Um, Doing it, you know, to get people up who might actually be better suited to the space environment is good,
Mm-hmm.
and can also kind of expand our way of thinking about it, who should be up there. And then we also kind of covered the context in which it could be bad. And so I think that's important too. So just, using someone as a guinea pig is not okay. Um, but I think the next like logical thing to talk about is really the question of like where do we draw the lines, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
how do we decide who is fit for this? Like who's fit to go up, even if we're trying to be as open minded as possible about it. What uh, what lines do we still have to draw?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have thoughts on that, or an article that you feel like helps
Hmm.
weigh in on this? Because that's kind of like the state of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like, what, your question. I'm just gonna reframe your question a little bit. So it's
Sure.
like, you know, where's the line that we draw where's the line that we draw to feel for who, and it's like, okay, for who to feel okay with allowing a person to go from a medical professional to allow someone to go into space, because that's the way that I'd think about it. It's like, who is actually drawing the line first?
Uh
Like,
huh.
who am I a am I just like you know someone, like, in what position am I? Am I a flight surgeon? Am I a NASA director? Am I a launch operator, like someone who's is dealing with you know having people on spacewalks, which is actually happening right now? Like, who am I to weigh into that, and like, what are the, like, so say I am the flight surgeon, because I like, that's where I think we are both interested in, like, potentially being in the future, or at least someone in some way, somehow, in the future.
Speak for yourself,
Yeah,
Kyle.
it's
Just
just
kidding.
do you have feedback? Do you, like, how do you who feeds into you into a recommendation for a mission profile? Like, how does, like, I don't even know how any of that works, but it would be important to know, like, is this person going to be required to do, I think they're all need to be spacewalk certified. You all have to be able to, like, um, I think you have to be able to use, like, the Canadarm, and I think you have like certain basic requirements, but EVA is, I think, probably the biggest physical requirement. And so
Are there astronauts that you're aware of who go up who are never going to be assigned to do an EVA, as far as you understand?
so I know that there was, again, from the commercial side, there was a civilian that went to the International Space Station, and I'm not sure if they did an EVA, and I'm not sure if that's like, I think it's I think it's a requirement for NASA astronauts, but
Hmm.
I don't imagine it being a requirement to go to, like a private, space space station.
Right. Sure.
Like, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe, but, like, I don't know.
Hmm. I think they're. I'm. I might be mistaken on this, but I believe there are some situations where people are going up to the space station for very short-term durations, and I think and this is something we've talked ad nauseum in previous episodes about, but just, like if you're only going up for a little bit, you're not even going to be fully adapted. And I would guess people going in like a 2-week mission to the ISS or something, a very like quick turnover mission. I don't know how common that happens, but if that were to be the case, I would think that some of those people just might not even be doing an EVA.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, because I think
Right, but yeah, I guess the main point is though that there are things on the space station that one would be expected to be able to do, despite whatever kind of health condition they're coming up with.
yeah.
And
So
EVA could be one of those.
yeah. So your question is
One
where
thing
do
that
where
just
do go ahead, you got it.
Oh, I was going to say another one that just occurred to me would be the problem of maintaining fitness, because I've noticed a lot of at least if you look at the ESA's Astronaut feasibility project page, it
Mm-hmm.
seems like they want to have up individuals of short stature, or someone with a below the knee amputation, or someone who maybe doesn't have um,
Mm-hmm.
2 legs of the same length. This is pure. I'm going purely off of like the graphic they have there.
Yeah, it's
And
also in
I'm
the
sure
article. Yep.
yeah, they cover. I'm sure they cover a lot of other stuff too. But just looking at these 3 specific cases alone, uh, I know that the physical fitness equipment they have up there is suited for people with 2 legs and probably of like a certain height range, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
So
think
it's interesting.
I also think literally like if I mean now that the equation has changed with the Crew Dragon being online, it's kind of changed. But the Soyuz capsule, you had to literally be within a certain height range because they do like a molding of your back of your entire
Whoa,
rear section because you
that's kind
on landing you go through like what Chris Hadfield would said as like a minor car crash because they have rockets that decelerate when you hit like 15 feet or probably like 3 meters or something like that, and you kind of like a little rocket kind of helps you decelerate that last little bit, but you have to
still
like
standing into the ground,
you
is what
actually
you're saying.
fit into this like mold.
Huh.
And actually astronauts, because of spinal decompression, they actually sometimes don't really fit back in their thing because they grew like several centimeters, like they actually got taller. And so
Okay, so it's really like, I guess the point is there's a lot of hardware barriers to doing a project like this that would also have to be tackled to make it more accessible.
yeah, I think I have a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's interesting. So it's like I just talked about spinal decompression, and we're almost constantly like loading our spines and compressing our intervertebral discs, and there are many cases in recovery from surgery or people with certain disabilities that being in 0G could be a good way to help recover. People with osteoarthritis, people with mobility issues, for which like orthopedic surgery is like the kind of final solution, to kind of helping people get mobile again. It's just a space hospital or space rehabilitation center, like
Space clinic.
yeah, it's like that. Of course, people with this disability should be able to should do both. Like people with certain disabilities should go to space, purely because they're great astronauts. That's what we're talking about today. But my tangent is like also people with certain disabilities could go to space. It's a little fanciful thinking at this point because
Yeah.
just creating a space station and whatever, but is incredibly expensive. But like kind of as like a science fiction thing, space hospitals are like a thing in space in science fiction, and so like if we really want to make science fiction into fact, like we should we should really figure out this disability thing, because space could be
Yeah.
this like healing environment for people with certain mobility issues.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that there's some potential there. So yeah, I think I guess among the other sort of lines that would need to be drawn when kind of talking about this, um, at least the lines that I should say I would expect to be drawn as someone kind of health minded or going through medical school. Um, you mentioned this very early on, but the parastronaut feasibility project doesn't really cover at all psychological
Mm-hmm.
issues, and this is interesting to me because we're the planet Earth. When I say we, I mean the planet Earth is kind of like in a depression epidemic as well as a
Mm-hmm.
COVID pandemic, um, and I believe that there's probably a lot of great candidates out there who might be excluded by psychological or behavioral filters. And I think there's actually, yeah, you have the article pulled up here.
Yep.
I think I was able to find some article. I'm not sure if this is exactly the one I saw earlier without really reading into it, but among the factors that we're excluding astronaut candidates currently, never mind this new para-astronaut feasibility project, just under the current restrictions, I think behavioral and psychological factors were one of the most common reasons why someone was um, essentially ruled out as a candidate.
Mm.
And I believe, not to stray the topic or go too tangential on this, but I think cardiovascular reasons, like someone having hypertension is a no-go, or risk of stroke or something,
Mm-hmm.
was one of the other most common factors there.
Interesting.
But the behavioral side is really interesting, right? Because you can lie, you can always lie about your behavioral stuff, so that's like already kind of it's a hard thing to screen against. And B, I believe even the screening that they do currently is not adequately predictive of whether problems will occur.
Mm.
And I think, or at least some of the articles that I was looking at were alluding to a very storied history of clashes between crewmates in space, for instance, as a result of personalities not jiving together, or just the ways different people viewed their own position on the crew, like
Mm-hmm.
scientists versus pilots or something, was like a dichotomy that had more attention in the past, I believe. But yeah, there's a lot of psychological factors to consider in terms of who should be going up and who shouldn't be. Like if you've been diagnosed in the past with depression, for instance, does
Mm-hmm.
that disclude you from astronaut candidacy? How does that work?
So it's interesting you bring that up. I'm sorry to interject.
No, please, yeah.
But it's actually kind of a very topical thing in the field of aerospace medicine. So on the aero side of things, like FAA flight people that do general medical aviation exams,
Mm-hmm.
They ask about your mental health history, and if people have like really hard times, if they have ever been on an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which is a treatment for depression and a lot of other things, but a lot of psychological kind of diagnoses and
disorders, yeah.
and so yeah, it's like if you have ever had been prescribed this thing, like you can lose your first class medical certificate, and for so it means like I think your first class medical is required for working on a commercial flight where you're flying people, as well as for air traffic control. I think you have to do that too. I don't know, but I think the aviation community has a little, like, they have something to deal with people like hijacking a plane, and like that's like kind of like a defense against people trying to take their own lives in this kind of thing.
I think you're spot on with bringing this up, right? Because that's the same kind of problem that you would really, really, really want to avoid on the space station. You can't just send people up willy-nilly, like whenever you want, to deal with someone who's become erratic. Just generally, like any type of conflict in space that like is the result of a breakdown could just turn things catastrophic really quickly, I would think. I'm sure there's a million ways you can sabotage the space station. It's kind of a floating bubble.
Yeah, I think
it's drilling a hole on the side of it is not enough. Which is something that may have been like a prior potential sabotage attempt, but yeah. So it's just really interesting that they try to control for that when it's like something that's really difficult to control for. I can almost understand the blanket ban on anyone who's ever been on an SSRI. I would think that like anything objective like that, they would really grapple onto, because there's so few objective markers for anything else related to someone's psychological fitness. But I also, at the same time, I don't feel like I agree with it, right? Because there's probably millions of people who would be great astronauts and have also at some point been on an SSRI,
Yeah, I am on like the Reddit like flying community, and there's people that were like saying that they had like a bout of depression in like high school, and now they're like 35 and they're looking to get in the airlines, and they're having trouble because they had this. So it's like it comes across as like a good idea, and then it's like, oh wait, but like the real world kind of like texture to that problem actually takes a different form that's like doesn't feel great. So, yeah, I think, in terms of drawing the line, like back to your original question, you can think of it as a physical disability versus a mental disability, and it's like, or psychological disability, and it's like, that's not the right line, because there's probably some psychological disabilities that would be okay, probably, and like.
Almost certainly.
And it's like,
especially
okay,
if they're distant past.
Yeah, so it's like you can't blanket that, and and maybe like I don't know, like as like the ISS is like the treehouse. It says can you come in or not. Like as there's more places to go in space, and also places that don't require you to be. The electrician, the plumber, the spacewalker, like all of the things, like when I go on an airplane flight or like a cruise, I'm not expected to like do all the maintenance and like do all the fly the thing and to do the plumbing and do the
pilot and the janitor.
It's like the astronauts currently are like they have to be these kind of multifunctional things, because of like the engineering of the actual like their environment, like they're just the amount of like ability for all their their teams to work together, and like to get all this stuff to work, like you have to be these like the Swiss Army knife of people, and like as that equation shifts, like I think the ability for you to be a passenger kind of on this, like back to this commercial space flight, that's gonna happen in I think October of this year, or no earlier than October of this year is probably the best way to say it. They're going up for 4 days, and I think they are just I think it's like completely autonomous, and I think you obviously have to train up to, dealing with certain emergencies, but I think based on mission profile, like I think the what your mission is supposed to do is going to feed it into a lot of where the line is drawn in the sand. So it's like,
Yeah.
who am I? Am I a flight surgeon? It's like, okay, under this circumstance, then I have to look at the mission profile for the astronaut and be like, okay, it's a 4-day journey. You have a hip, a knee replacement. That's not, it's not. It doesn't help. Probably, it doesn't probably help you. Maybe, I don't know. But it, like for 4 days, like almost anyone can go to space without any big issues. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think
that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, the equation. It's like, are we talking about the International Space Station, or are we talking about like a lunar base, or are we talking about a Martian colony? And it's like, I think, like that question takes a different frame, and I think it's something that I said in a previous orbit, where it's like, I think that a mission to the moon or Mars will maintain like the stringency of like very like physically able people to go to those places, but I think Leo is like opening up, and I think that's where that's the thing. But I think what a lot of these articles kind of bring up is that maybe we should rethink that. Like maybe a Martian mission or a lunar base like could benefit by someone with like a physical disability that could be better suited for something. Or just like we want to be inclusive, and like they just deserve a place in that mission. And yeah, so I think from all those different angles, it's just you have to balance the mission, and then who you're talking as. It's like, am I a flight surgeon? Because I think other people would have a different opinion. Maybe because this is a private space mission. Like maybe like it's the CEO or something like that has the say, or like kind of back into
probably true.
Like the ticket, like we've talked about like the potential problems with like it being like a wealth driven enterprise. And it's like, if you buy a ticket, it just kind of changes the whole requirement, and you're not dealing with like a quote unquote like beneficent like government entity that's like trying to, I don't know, it just seems like the equation changes.
Yeah, they're not, the accountability is different, right? Because when it's a government program, the people hold that government program accountable for the risks that they pose on their employees, and in this case astronauts. But if you're SpaceX, you're not even a publicly traded company. The accountability is much different, and I don't even know how legally anything works in low Earth orbit, for instance, like the kind of things that you can do in terms of like the waiver that you give to the person you're going up or you're sending up. That's like a whole different discussion.
I'm super interested to, like, you see the articles, but like I want to talk to the SpaceX flight surgeon about this, and actually to all the space nerds out there, there is a medical student rotation at SpaceX. in Hawthorne, California, where you can apply to work and be a part of the SpaceX flight surgeon team. And it's kind of a really like something that I hope both of us are able to do, because I want to talk to that person and be like, what went in your head, like there, I don't think there's definitely not like a manual. There's no like a decision tree, you know, like in the emergency department, it's like, oh, if a person has this, then that, send them for CT, or like, you know, admit, or like there's like a thing, and like this is like this is unexplored territory. Like sending a person with orthopedic hardware and somewhat of a physical disability into space, and so it's like this is a first. So what do you do with the first? Like, how do you even begin to think about that? So that'd be so cool to talk to that person, and I can't wait until we both work there. So
yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look to see if that's still going on when I'm in my third year. But yeah, do you have any other thoughts or other directions to take this conversation? I think we've done a good job of kind of like, we talked about the pros and cons of doing it, the ways to do it right and the ways to do it wrong. Sort of looked into the possibilities or like barriers that you would have to face with physical disabilities, at least, and kind of the I don't know, can of worms that the mental health side of it is in currently. I feel like we sort of just have to wait and see how these things play out. Actually, if you look at that parastronaut disability project, kind of at the bottom, it just says straight up like, hey, we are looking for someone, but there's no guarantee that the person we ultimately select to fill this role, this opportunity, will even go into space.
Oh yeah.
And they don't actually mention, you know, who they need to have the discussion with to like figure out, yeah, if the flight is guaranteed. But it's kind of just a waiting game. We'll sort of see what happens here.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting position for ESA to take, because, like, as we talked about before we started recording, like, ESA doesn't, they don't have a designated launcher. Like, they have the Ariane 5, which launches out of French Guiana in South America, and, like, because it's really close to the equator, and it's like this really crazy place to go and watch a launch, apparently. But they don't have a human-capable rocket. So it's kind of like you look to the other two shows in town, which are, you know, Roscosmos and NASA, and it's, you know, how do they barter with a seat in those other two, like, working in terms of the different space agencies. So it's kind of interesting question. Like, what is that relationship like? I don't know.
Yeah, I think they might have some convincing to do, but I'm hopeful that at least the United States can be open-minded, like NASA can be open-minded to this as a possibility and as an opportunity. But yeah,
I think there was, you know, a lot of I think it hit like the late night talk shows, like when there was a dual female spacewalk, which was a first of its kind. So like first in space used to be, you know, first person to do EVA, first person to go to space, you know, Yuri Gagarin. First person to do EVA was American was, I think, Ed White. The first person to land on the moon, you know, like these people that we know their names, like Neil Armstrong. And it's like the new firsts are like, you know, opening up the first person with, you know, orthopedic hardware. I think she's also the youngest person to go to space. I think she's beat beat the other standing by a couple years. So I think like pushing those boundaries is just, you know, really it's never been a more exciting time to be in space, like in the space world, and it's only going to get better. And like I
And hopefully, it's only going to be applicable to more and more people.
yeah yeah I really do see a wave of like new enthusiasm around spaceflight, and I just we have like an obligation to make it this inclusive thing, because like that's what we should do. Like we want to be like like it's just simple, like it's just there's no other argument needed. Like we just need this thing to be um and it's and it like, you know, I just think it's how it's actually going to play out. Like, is it going to be a SpaceX thing? Is it going to be, you know, from this ESA program? Whatever first is going to be pretty exciting, I think. And but how it actually gets implemented, I'm already super curious about. So
Yeah.
and
Well, unless you have any other closing thoughts, I feel like I haven't been keeping track. But just to remind everyone, the reason we've been calling this an orbit is we try to do an episode and the time it takes for the International Space Station to do a lap around the Earth, and we actually have a cool graphic to demonstrate that. I'm not
let's
sure
pull
we
it
brought
up.
that up yet.
Why not?
I didn't even really look at where we would have started when we began the episode.
We're at an hour recording.
Okay, cool.
And so we're currently over the north coast of Africa near Gibraltar and southern tip of Spain. And yeah, so we should have I should have paid attention to where we started out, but yeah, so I guess in summary, like, do you have any like summary statements about like both like this coming year, but also like where you hope things will go in the next, you know, 5-10 years?
Sure. I mean, like I've kind of said a couple times, you know, we've talked a lot about like the pros and cons and like the considerations that need to go into this kind of thing. But I think the bottom line is that it's happening, and it's probably far past due for the space scene to kind of take a dive into this like equity, all these ideas about equity and inclusivity, and trying to like make sure that the people who are up there are people that everyone here on Earth can look to and be like, oh my goodness, like that person up there, it makes me feel like I could be the next person up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's such an important thing that's brought up in these types of conversations. It's like, if you can't see it, then how can you be it? You know. Mm-hmm. So it was like such a, I mean, it was such an awesome thing for Kamala Harris. Like a lot of people were really excited because they're like, yes, I can be like her, and like I'm like her, and like I could do that. And I'm like, and it's like, yes, like please, yeah. Like we want people like her. Like we want this excitement for space for everyone, and like hence the title of the show. It's like making space for everyone. It's like what a you know, tragedy it would be if we couldn't, you know.
Right. And I think there's a lot to like think about when trying to make it apply to the space environment, where there's a lot of things that will kill you if they go wrong. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of planning that needs to go around it, but I'm glad that we are actually starting to think about those things and trying to figure out how to make this more of a reality.
Yeah, and I think it's the role, like in summary, I think it's the role of a flight surgeon to kind of like keep in mind the mission profile, and in terms of just trying to make space this inclusive place, trying to keep everything in balance is probably like an incredibly hard thing to do. and dealing with risks that are unrealized. Like there's a potential for a risk or a potential for something to happen down the way, and it's really hard for people to like emotionally get behind. Oh, you have a 20% chance for a DVT if you go to space. I completely just made that up, but like so say that's a thing. Um, a deep vein thrombosis, like a clot in your leg that like can cause problems in circulation. And so it's like, say that's a thing. Well, there's like 80% possibility that doesn't happen at all. But how do you like do these risk calculators? And I think that's where a lot of the initial like proving this out, and the kind of the risk stance, kind of like radiation or kind of like bone loss, like the risk stance they'll have to be calculated and have to be dealt with in that very same way. And it'll be a hard thing to kind of quantify, because I think a lot of these different disabilities take many different shapes and sizes and forms, and they're not all the same. The kind of back to the SSRI thing. A person that is constantly on SSRI and has like suicidal thoughts, like probably not great to go into space. But a person that had it in high school and they were doing well because of circumstances, and it's been like 15-20 years, like that's a way different thing. So kind of that case by case scenario seems to be really applicable here.
Yeah,
But yeah,
a lot of unique challenges, but I think there's probably like a JFK quote about that in space, in the context of space.
yep.
Uh, so yeah, it's definitely the right theater to be minded on these problems.
Yep. I guess
Cool.
I guess to end, like what are we thinking about cooking up for next time, and kind of what do we hope to work on? What do you think? What
Um,
seems fun?
this topic that we did today was probably the most topical thing that I could like come up with thinking about. Um, but I think going forward, if we can try to get someone who's more of an expert on a certain field, that might be the best like thing to do, because it's always fun. Like when we do these kind of sessions where we talk about a problem that we don't have like firsthand expertise with, it always just ends up us coming up with a bunch of questions and sort of
Mm,
speculating about it, which is awesome and a lot of fun. But it would be even cooler if we, truly had someone sitting in the room with us, so to speak, to like directly be able to answer some of these questions.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I
So we'll
think
see. I
that's
guess we'll
that's
see if we can
great.
find someone like that.
Yeah, I do have a couple people that I've tapped on the shoulder that hopefully will come on the show. One of them works in kind of muscle atrophy during space flight. Was able to work on the one of the ESA. I can't Abriza. I forgot. There's some study name with an acronym, but she was able to
Uh,
study gluteal muscles and atrophy. And one of the things I thought would be fun is doing a show that like debated. It's like a contrived debate, but like is bone loss or muscle loss more important? So kind of a debate
yeah, that's a
would be
fun
kind of
one.
would be kind of cool. And I'm also still thinking about the expanse thing about like stature, like the belters being like these really long boned individuals. I'm not sure that's the case. I think it's a complicated issue because epiphyseal plate, like growth plate physiology,
Hmm.
is complicated, and it feels like it's hormonally driven.
Save it for the
Yeah, but
episode.
it just seems like unloading might not close it prematurely.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I just realized this, but a lot of people, maybe even myself included, if you're an Expanse fan, uh, you'll know that like in the Expanse books, they describe these people who live out in deep space, who are like born and raised in deep space, as being really tall, having really brittle bones, and just not being well suited at all to like the Earth type gravity.
People down the well.
Yeah, and in the TV show, of course, they try to show like a couple examples of these people known as belters living way out like past the asteroid belts as being really tall, but for the most part, they're just normal actors and actresses. And the funny thing to me is this whole time, like I'd kind of sort of criticized the show a little bit and saying like, oh, they didn't really do it like how they did it in the book. But now Kyle's sitting here telling me, he's like, well, wait a second, maybe the show is actually more accurate. And, like, it would just look like, you know, normal Earth-born and grown shaped people.
Well, it seems like a really hard like thing to pinpoint because, you know, just gestation in space is already a really complicated thing, and not even sure that's going to go well. And so it's like, you know, early skeletal development like would happen in, you know, in utero, and so I don't know if that would change anything, let alone like longitudinal bone growth. Endochondral ossification would be changed probably. So it's, I don't know, it'd be crazy.
Well, maybe we should call it an episode before all the you know, the sparks start flying, because I can see your head starting to spin.
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, it's interesting. So there's always more to talk about, but thank you, Ryan, for spending your time with me and doing another orbit. It's super fun. Like this, I think this topic didn't have a research article really associated with it, but I think this topic is really in the news and something that's really important to kind of keep space this wonderful place where everyone can aspire to go to it. So I guess I'll do an outro. I am Kyle Anderson, your space medical student host, and I was joined today by Ryan, my space nerd friend, and just wanted to say thanks for listening, and I'm going to do another outro probably. So I'm going to switch over to here and just say thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. See ya.
So thanks for listening to Let's Talk Space Medicine. If you want to continue the discussion and meet more fellow space nerds, be sure to check out @TalkSpaceMed on Twitter and the Let's Talk Space Medicine server on Discord. Thanks, and see you next episode.